Welcome everybody to another edition of Boston Real Estate Town Hall with the Goodrich team at Compass. I'm joined this afternoon with Kaitlin Georges of the Goodrich team. Welcome, Kaitlin.
Hi, thank you, Ethan.
Kaitlin has been a member of our team for the past 6 or 7 years now. She's been a top producer for us and such a leader in not only for our team but in the industry. She works and resides in Boston, so she has a lot to say about the market and what's going on personally with her, what she thinks is likely to happen, and some trends that are going on with real estate, residential sales, and what to look out for the coming months. So glad to have you on, Kaitlin. If you want to just kind of introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Ethan. As he said, I left my corporate career in real estate in 2014, kind of on a whim because I wasn't happy, and walked into the Goodrich office that used to be in the West End and felt like home immediately. So I've been working with Ethan ever since. A lot has happened in the last 6 years in my life. Got married. I have a 1-year-old who you might hear screaming in the background. But I have lived in Charlestown ever since. We just bought and renovated a house a few years ago. So, yeah, a lot has happened in my career, but this is certainly something for the books about what's going on now.
Yeah, and it's really frustrating to in a lot of ways for me because just with all the Q1 stats coming out the past few days, it's really frustrating to see the direction that the market was going this year and how hot it was starting, with just the amount of home sales, the relationship, or just the increase from the Q1 of 2019 to 2020. And we were all really excited. And I'm sure you, just like me, have a lot of buyers that are eager to either find out what to do or to put in offers right now with the low supply levels that we have.
Yeah, I think, for the first time ever in the last 6 years, I think I put in like 6 offers over Christmas week, which was unheard of.
Yeah.
And a lot of those closed in Q1. And from that, things were just going nuts. I had, I don't know, probably somewhere between 15 and 20 active buyers at the beginning of March. And it has calmed down quite a bit just because of everything that's going on. But yeah, in general, we were all poised, I think, for a really exciting year. And those numbers are indicating everything that we've seen in our office and within our team as well. So
Mhm.
it's tough, but
So, I know you have some listings that are going to be coming on this year. What would you advise sellers right now that are ready to list their condos ready, to be marketed and shown? What would you advise them to do right now?
yeah, I think it totally is situational depending on why the person is listing and what their plans are for the future. I think for clients of mine, I can just go through them. So one client that I have, is undergoing a renovation right now. Um, the project is still moving forward, not the speed that it was before because of the regulations that have been put in place by the city. But in general, we're trying to get as much done as we can. And the plan for that one is once it's ready to go, we're going to start pre-marketing just as we would normally.
Mhm.
And I think, we kind of have a target price that they had in mind that they wouldn't be willing to move forward if they got below that. So I think we're going to list right at their target price and kind of test the market and see what's going to happen on
Mhm.
everything, Compass coming soon, Zillow coming soon, wherever we can put it, Instagram, just to see who's out there. It's in the South End. It's 325 Columbus. I can see the address. It's going to be completely renovated, a really nice one bed. Where the market in the South End, for something like this is still really, really great from what I'm seeing. So we have high hopes for that one. Probably will be coming on the market in early May. So, like I said, we're not going to put on MLS probably for a little while, but we're going to test out coming soon and see what the action is on that. Later in the year, I do have some clients who are looking to upgrade or move out of the city. So I think those ones are going to be a little bit on hold right now just because they are not sure exactly what's going on, and they're not super comfortable with people coming into their property, and they're not in a place where they need to sell right now. So I think with those clients, we're going to wait, another month or so and see how everything shakes out and go from there.
Yeah, no, I'm going through some similar experiences that you are as well, where we're kind of unsure exactly how to start, and we had to make a decision. So for a lot of the listings that are coming on the market that I'm putting on it, we're going to try to target a hard date, and for the meantime, the ones that are ready, we're going off market with them
Yeah.
on Compass coming soon and some other platforms. So if you're out there looking for or wondering where the listings are, I would check out uh, Compass coming soon. Zillow coming soon is another area where people broadcast them, and then also ask your agent as well, because there's so many networks that consumers aren't going to be able to access that are off market portals for listings that are coming on the market. May, June, and people that are ready to sell them, but don't want to uh, market them yet with some limitations right now with either they're being apprehensive to list because they can't do open houses, or just because they don't want to get higher days on market in April, when in May you might be able to have more access to the listings and easier uh, or less restrictions in terms of open houses and showings.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the main takeaway too, to my buyers, is just like what you're seeing on market is probably, I don't even know, maybe one third, one fourth of what people actually know that they're going to list.
Yeah.
I mean, our team is an indication alone. We probably have 5 or 6, if not more, that we know for sure, contract or sign, these are going to be listed. And so if we're experiencing that, you would think that everybody sort of is in a similar boat. And so I think like the drive home to buyers is you need to rely on your agent. You need to be reaching out saying, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I want, and this is what I would make me move forward tomorrow. Because there are people out there that, much like our sellers, if they get the price they want, they're not going to say no. I mean, they're not. I think in general, sellers aren't looking for like an explosion from their listing price. I mean, I think they want what they have in mind, and if someone's going to pay it right now, why not? Kind of.
Yeah, and there's not as much risk either for a seller that isn't on the market yet, because they can, test it out with an offer, even if there's contingencies in place. You know, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, there's not as much risk with sellers right now to accept an offer, because even if there are contingencies in place, they can work through them before they put it on the market, and then they don't have that stigma that the property fell out of agreement, or the buyers are coming to them saying, well, what happened here? Was it a home inspection issue, or is there a problem with the association that I need to be aware about? Those things tend to really resonate with buyers when properties go out of agreement. And in this case, there's an opportunity for buyers to or for an opportunity for sellers to be able to sell the property and test it without getting that, even if it does fall through, they can go back to market. So both buyers and sellers should have their they should be ready to move if there's a property that works for them, or a buyer that works for them, because a deal can still be done. And a lot of the ones I'm doing right now are off market, and
Yeah.
we're putting in offers on places that might be coming out end of May, and we're making some good headway. So I definitely advise to go those channels right now as a listing agent, and as a buyer.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other drive home point, especially for buyers, is we're just not seeing sellers that need to sell. I mean, it's just not happening right
Yeah.
now. If this continues
Like,
until
are you talking about like buyers that are like, oh, the seller must be desperate because of the market? That
exactly.
kind of feel, yeah. So
Yeah,
what do you,
exactly. I mean, there's probably some outliers as there is with anything in life, but in general, I think the general consensus is buyer or sellers that have their properties on the market,
hmm.
just they want what they want, and it they're not selling because they have to. They're selling because they want to or they need to, it because of something else. But it's not something they're willing to give up $100,000 for. It's just not happening.
Yeah, it's not as desperation. And
Right.
if you look back historically to 2008, 2009, when we had our last real estate crisis, um, first of all, there was so much supply. It's a lot different where we're actually We're on 1 month in most markets supply. Our absorption rate is super low. And, back in 2009 and 8, there was a the market and economy was overbuilt, and there wasn't enough buyers for that. So, that was a 3-year slide into that.
Right.
And even when that did happen, especially in markets like Boston, the pricing didn't really drop too much. It kind of stayed pretty stagnant and for about 2 or 3 years, and then it started 7-year boom, which we're still in right now in 2020, starting in around 2012. So, for people to look out for these massive drops, maybe there is going to be some smaller drops in case to case for individual listings, but I wouldn't expect too much for massive price reductions because sellers have been waiting a long time and have seen great returns, and they're going to want to make the most of their money or most of their property that they possibly can right now.
Right. I mean, I think the takeaway for buyers, at least what I'm telling my buyers, is like if you're looking for some sort of advantage right now, I think the biggest advantage you're going to get is if this was a normal late April, early May market, we would
Yep.
be, dropping contingencies. There'd be 10 or 12 offers on a property that was priced correctly. And right now, yeah, there are less offers and you're not dropping as many contingencies. So that's kind of your advantage right now. But you're still probably going to pay ask or a little bit more. It's kind of what
Yeah,
I'm
well, especially the first week, even off market, it's
yeah,
certainly going to be competitive, regardless of this coronavirus. I've been in 2 or 3 bidding wars this week alone. I put
right.
3 bids in yesterday. Each one of them had multiple offers, and you think you're the only one going in, and then all of a sudden, all these other buyers are coming in out of the woodwork, and you're competing. So
What
the
parts of the state are you doing this? Like where what town?
Boston. So,
Boston.
South End yesterday, one in Melrose yesterday, actually one in Melrose, and then one in Cambridge yesterday. So the one in
Okay.
Cambridge was a listing that I was representing, or still am representing. But the um, the the buyers are certainly getting there for properties that are priced well. They're definitely getting a good amount of competition. But versus last year, which
Yeah.
it was probably 2 or 3 times more in terms of the amount of people we're bidding against, especially in Cambridge where
Yeah,
it's
Cambridge.
hot all the time.
Are
So
your Wait, quick question for you. Are your buyers walking through the properties or are they doing this virtually?
it's a mix. So we've done a couple virtual offers and virtual showings with offers, but most of them, and I don't know if this is going on for you too. We actually have to get vetted first
Yeah.
with
I've
a
heard, yeah.
virtual tour. They have to sign off on it, and then well, a couple of them have made us agree to drive by the property and scout the location first, and even walk the exterior of the property for single families, and then sign off on that. Then we could schedule a showing. So there's a lot of vetting that's going on from the listing agents before we can even get into the property.
Once
And
if
once
you
you're in there, you're wearing masks, gloves.
Yeah.
Um, it's a scene from Contagion.
Yeah, I've had listing agents that have required updated, which I mean, it makes sense. They've required updated pre-approvals from that day, making sure that the people are still like able to buy it. And then I've had a couple of questionnaires that have to be filled out, just saying, "Have you been sick?" or whatever, and then you have to sign it. So
Oh, interesting.
I think it's similar. But for are your listing agents making you put anything in the offer for the virtual ones, saying that you're going to take it no matter what? I mean, my rental green is coming on for like a sight unseen. I don't know if that's a thing. I haven't done that with anybody. I just was wondering if, because what happens if a month down the line, I guess their deposit's on the line, but
Yeah, so there was one particular offer we put in where we put in it virtually. We had to put an offer in and then come to terms first, and then we were able to schedule an appointment.
oh, interesting.
The seller wouldn't sign the offer, even though after we've agreed on terms, until we walk through 24 hours. So technically, the buyer could have lost out on the the single family, but if another offer had come in because the seller hadn't signed it, but we had a back and forth verbally with what we would agree upon, and then
That
we.
makes sense. I mean, the one that I'm looking to put on in the near future is vacant, so we don't have it's not an issue. But in general, I feel like that's kind of a good way to do it. So then you're not getting a million people in, but you can sign off that they've walked through it and still like it. That makes sense.
So are you advising your buyers right now to go to open houses, or what are you doing with your buyers?
It's tough. I mean, I over this past weekend, I did have multiple sets of buyers that went to properties, and I have had some that have asked. I personally am not super comfortable. I have my son, and then my mother-in-law has cancer, so and we've seen her a few times. So personally, I don't really feel like I'm that into going, but
Mhm.
I have had situations where listing agents have opened the door for my buyers and they've gone through.
Yep.
It just kind of depends on what's going on. I have not gone to anything yet. I'm not saying I wouldn't, but if there's an option, a different option, I would prefer that. It's kind of my thing.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, if I was a listing agent, I would probably on a place that we were selling, I would probably do the same thing. I would stack showings, 15, 20 minutes apart, open the door, sanitize everything, and not, I mean, the less people, the better. If the buyer's agent wants to see it for whatever reason, I feel like if you're an experienced buyer's agent, you can kind of distinguish what's going on from a virtual tour. I don't
Mhm.
know.
Yeah. Well, I think it's trimming the fat for sure of, some of the window shopping that happens during real estate showings where your neighbors and uh,
Yeah.
you know people that are looking to do something on Saturday and Sunday mornings are coming out to clog the open houses, which in people's defense, I used to do that as well with my wife. So
Yeah.
it's fun to see houses and go door to door, but I think it helps us save time, and that's the most important thing, is making sure that serious buyers and sellers or serious buyers are the ones that are getting into the property. So yeah, I'm doing the same thing with the listings. I have 5 listings on right now, and all of them, some of them have tenants, so we're not doing any showings, but
Yeah.
unless they are there to put an offer, and then we'd schedule something in advance, but do the necessary precautions. So let's talk a little bit about just like the cyclical nature of Boston. So this is kind of going to push off the market, which typically starts, end of February, the spring market, and then rides through all the way through the end of June. Do you think that's going to get pushed forward? Because usually we have a little bit of a slower July in Boston. Do you think that it's going to get pushed forward and there's going to be a wave of listings coming on the market, or a wave of buyers, or do you think it's going to be missed altogether, and then we're going to kind of resume as normal, as typical, how the market typically is?
I maybe this is me thinking positively and optimistically. I think that it's going to be pushed forward. I mean, again, personally, I don't even know how many buyers and sellers say, as soon as this all blows over, we're ready to go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, most of my buyers are, looking for maybe a bought one condo and are looking to upgrade because they have another kid, or they're not in a situation where they're tied to a lease or they're tied to a school district. I don't have too many of those buyers at this moment.
Mhm.
But I think that those, school district and lease end date are big things.
Yeah.
However, I do think that the leasing and the rental market is going to change too, because I think a lot more landlords would rather, have their tenants stay month to month because everything's getting pushed. So like June 1st is a big turnover date in Boston. And personally, all first time homebuyers I had that were June 1st had moved their leases to September 1st, giving them the entire summer to try and figure out what's going on. And so I think that's, for those people, they probably will make a decision, again, by July 4th, what they're going to do. So I don't know. I mean, I do think it's going to be pushed forward. I think we're going to be working a lot more in July and August than we have in the past.
Mhm.
And again, I do think that I've also had some really, really busy falls. So maybe it'll just be one of those falls. I mean, I think the other thing that's factoring into this a little bit is the election this year. Again, I was only through one election in
Yeah.
2000.
It just adds like another
Yeah,
layer
I mean, it's just like I
yeah.
don't know. I mean, in 2016, I don't. It was a big deal, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I do know that that's another factor that's kind of added in here. So
Yeah, and just to speak on election years, is typically what happens historically is it's more of a pause. So we're kind of, I know people have referred to this pandemic as a great pause, and there's another pause that potentially could happen with just people not doing anything, listing properties, or putting in offers. So something to consider if you were a seller for sure is trying to time it right. So, I personally think there's going to be a huge wave, including my own listings, having about 8 million coming to the market in May. It's going to be, you know, listing agents like myself that are trying to hit that first wave
Yeah.
with listings. And then I think, through the fall, I think it's not going to really be normal again until next spring,
Yeah.
on a cyclical nature. But and who knows? I mean, that's just a near. That's the longest prediction I'm willing to make is that far out. I don't think I could do anything further. But if we have a big surge from June 1st through August, and then maybe a little bit of slowdown, due to the election and due to the time of year in Boston, which is typically a little bit slower. I think then they'll start getting back to normal starting in 2021. So in terms of the rental market, you had mentioned, and before we got on, you had brought up that there's talks of some of the schools starting a little bit later, leases that might be not be as cyclical as 9/1. So which is 80 from the data I've seen, it's like 80% of all the leases in Boston start on 9/1. That could really impact a lot of buyers that are in leases, or a lot of tenants that normally would start 9/1 that are not going to be able to. So
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. There's just a couple reports out there saying that BU might postpone until January 2021, just to make sure that, they don't want to keep revisiting this every month. If they push it off, then, I don't want to say it's a guarantee they'll come back, but it's a better possibility, and then people can plan accordingly. But that being said, there are thousands of apartments that are going to turn over on 9/1, especially in that Fenway, Kenmore, Allston, Brighton area. So if a big school like BU is not coming back, I mean, what's going to happen to the rental market? It's kind of wild,
right.
because these companies own all of these units, and like, can they hold for 6 months? I mean, some of them run pretty thin anyway. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, it could be a whole new thing of what's going on with people buying buildings, or I don't know. We'll see. It's just going to, personally, I would love if September 80% didn't turn over on September 1st, but in general, that's been the trend, and it's been getting higher and higher every year I've been in real estate. So it could throw a little bit of a wrench into what the city of Boston knows as a normal rental market too.
Yeah. So, one thing I want to get into a little bit is the data
Yeah.
for this year, and I have it in front of me, so I don't expect you to know these off the top of your head. But over 2019, one of the big things I saw between 2019 and 2018 is prices were still a lot higher per foot and overall versus 2018.
Sure.
But the days on market was about 10% higher, 20% higher in some neighborhoods. I think that trend continued, and we can see it here. The days on market is, certainly up around 20 to 30%. In Back Bay, uh, we had the best quarter 1 in 2020 in terms of average sale price, and the price per foot was 1339, which is
Crazy. Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, it's even for Back Bay, and it only was topped by one other neighborhood, Seaport, which I'm guessing was to do with new construction in Seaport at $1,616 a foot, which is up almost $650 a foot. For 1,000 square foot place, that's $650,000. So that's incredible to see that growth. And some of the other things I've seen is, from 2019 to 2020, we've seen almost a 10% increase in average price in the 20 of 22 neighborhoods in Boston. That's kind of been around the average. And then, some of them have gone a little bit higher. Can you speak to any of the neighborhoods that you've seen like a resurgence of, activity, or, a surge of activity, or, or an area that has grown a lot that, makes sense for one reason or another, or doesn't make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest one, and I looked at the data real quick before our call, but I think the biggest one that, kind of resonated with me a little bit was the West Roxbury market went way up. I think it went up like, is it 40%, something like that?
Yeah, I
And
have 40. It went up from 440,000 to 630,000
yeah, it's
quarter 1 to 19 to quarter 120. So 43%. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had buyers that actually were looking there in quarter four of 2019, and they were, a young couple had were recently married, and their whole thing was they lived in Southie and they wanted to stay in the city, but they also wanted a house with a yard and a driveway and a good neighborhood where they could walk around with a stroller, whatever is going to happen in their future. They wanted to stay, somewhat urban, but not, right downtown. And West Roxbury hit all of those bullet points.
Yeah.
And
It's
we
almost like
saw,
a suburb, even though it's within the
yeah,
city. Yeah.
yeah. And we saw a ton of places there. I mean, we probably saw, I don't even know, maybe 20 houses there, and their open houses were absolutely packed. There were multiple offers on almost every property that we put an offer in, and it was all kind of the same thing, like younger couples that wanted, I mean, I guess I don't know what they wanted to do, but they're all seemed like the same demographic. And so I think that kind of makes sense. I mean, these people, at least my buyers started their search a little bit closer in, kind of Southie, and then they were just like, we don't want to be in a condo. Couldn't find a single family that they, was in their price point. And so they ended up there and they ended up falling in love with the neighborhood. And I think it just makes sense, especially, I mean, one of my buyers worked at the hospital in the Longwood area, and it's super close to the Longwood area. So, if you're a nurse or a doctor, or even doing your residency or something, like that's kind of a no-brainer versus living in a, the other option is kind of like Fenway, Kenmore, where you're living, amongst students or whatever. So I think that there is a resurgence in that neighborhood, and it totally makes sense from what I saw.
So do you think that's driven by like the average price there, or how much you get, in terms of the property, getting a little bit bigger house, or do you think it's, something to do with location? Or I feel like, with Jamaica, especially like Jamaica Plain, West Roxbury, it's, a lot of people that are living in Charlestown or South Boston or downtown, you know, they get out there for the first time and then they're hooked. It's almost
Yeah,
like,
and that's totally what happened. These people lived in Southie, and they were just like, they weren't ready to go, as far as like, not that like a Milton is that much further or anything, or Dedham, but they wanted to be in Boston, and they wanted to have access to the commuter rail, and they wanted to have, the walkability to go places. And I think the price to get a single family in West, I mean, even if you're talking, what is it, 650? That's for a single family in Boston, even in Milton or any of those surrounding towns. 650 is a pretty good number to get a single family with a driveway and a yard.
yeah,
So, and the houses are a little bit closer together than in some of the surrounding suburbs, but some people like that.
it's
I live in Charlestown now, and I kind of love walking out my front door and seeing, people in the park, especially this time. So I don't know.
yeah. So let's, speaking of Charlestown, I want to talk about Charlestown and South Boston, which are, two of my favorite neighborhoods because they're kind of fringe neighborhoods to the city. Ugly stepsisters to downtown Boston, and
Don't say that.
but you typically get a little bit more space, and sometimes you can get parking or a yard or some good outdoor space. And I think that even though Charlestown's a lot smaller, it is very similar in terms of pricing to South
Yeah.
Boston. So South Boston this year so far, 185 listings have been listed this year. This time last year, 140. So it seems like the supply number is up a lot. And then, but with that, almost 100 or over $100,000 on the average sale price. From it's almost at 900,000 at the average sale price. Last year at this time, 790. The price per foot $20 higher. So that has to do a little bit, I think, with new construction, but also, as South Boston becomes more and more established in terms of like their retail and their scene in terms of things you can do, and the amount of people that are moving out, older generations that are renovating and selling it to younger generations. I think it's certainly becoming a very awesome place to start your life, or even to start your family, just because of all the things you can do there. With Charlestown, another great area. It's up similar numbers, up 70,000 since last year at this time on an average sale price, and almost $50 a foot. For these are all condo numbers, by the way. Charlestown's also very short supply, only listing 46 places this year versus last year having around 66. But it's interesting to see how each of these neighborhoods are growing similar rates, and what you can get is pretty similar on a per foot basis, both being right around 750. Have you seen, living in Charlestown, even since, I mean, you've lived there a while, have you seen changes over the last couple quarters there, or is it pretty consistent with what you've seen there?
I mean, I would say inventory is definitely low. Most places that are on market have multiple offers on them. I do think that the biggest difference, again, what you said between Southie and Charlestown, is Southie just has much more product than Charlestown does.
Yeah,
And so I
it's almost
have,
5 times bigger, I think.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I have a lot of buyers I would say most of my buyers are in the Southie Charlestown, one or the other.
yeah.
Usually they have a preference, but most groups that are okay with Southie are okay with Charlestown and vice versa. At least my buyers most end up in Southie just because there are more options over there.
Mhm.
Charlestown is just such a niche market that, it even comes down to the street in Charlestown for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So, I have a lot of buyers that'll say, "Oh, I only want Gaslight." Well, I know the data doesn't show that right now, but I would think that if you looked at that number of sales in the Gaslight district, it'd be probably a fourth of what the total are,
Yeah.
because there's just not that many that come up. And when they do, they're probably closer to 800 a square foot. And so, whereas in Southie, you could go, find something that's awesome on the east. If you want to be east side's the east side. So you could get something that's brand new for the same price that's, a little bit bigger. And like the difference too between Charleston and Southie to me is that Southie has a lot more new construction. Charlestown, especially in the Gaslight, has more restrictions on what you can do with the historical houses.
Mhm.
And so, in general, if you're going to get new construction in Charleston, usually it's on the backside, which is fine. I lived there for 6 years. It was great. But I just think that, in Southie, you can find these brand new construction places that really don't exist as much in Charlestown.
Yeah, I mean, and also it's like you said, it's not a street to street in South Boston where
Yeah.
it is in Charlestown. It's a little bit more specific, exactly where you want to be, and around the monument and in the front, closer to the city square area, training
Yeah.
field. I think that South Boston also has an advantage in terms of how big it is with Andrew Square and West Broadway
Yeah.
have two separate T's. So it's very pockety, I would say, in both neighborhoods, but more so in South Boston. They're almost different markets throughout South Boston. And
Totally. I mean, I have buyers who will only be East Side, which is more, family friendly, more neighborhoody, and then West Side, which is very much urban to me.
yeah,
So I usually have people, go one way or the other, and most people are not willing to look everywhere. So the other thing I'll say about Southie too is I feel like Southie has many more renters that start out in Southie, and it's driving the rental market way up. So people are paying, there's multiple applications on a place that's 32, like a 2 bed for 3,200. Which, if you do the math out, I mean, you could buy a 1 bedroom place and be paying substantially less for that.
yeah,
And so I think people, versus Charlestown, where the rental market isn't as crazy, there aren't as many rental units, much like sales units. So I think a lot of people start out in Southie and love it. And so that's kind of why they naturally filter into the sales market, because the rents are insane over there and the competition's insane. So a lot of people, again, I have a few buyers this year that are like, why am I paying $3,000 a month when I could be buying a 1 bed when they're, early mid 20s and making decent money, have a little savings? Like, it makes total sense. And you don't find as many of those over in Charlestown. So
yeah, and taking advantage of the rates is something that a lot of buyers are looking at this year. A lot of predictions are that with the Fed and the 10-year Treasury so low still, with their interest rates, the rates will probably stay low throughout the rest of the year. So there is still some incentive to lock in an interest rate, whether through a refinance or through a new purchase. But I think if you are doing a rent versus buy analysis, the rental prices haven't gone down; they're actually going up. And typically, in a situation like this, people tend to look towards rental because of the flexibility of that and the less money down. So there is going to be probably a little bit more demand in the rental market. So there might be some opportunities that exist for buying, or just looking at your options on a rent versus buy analysis. Typically what we look for is the length of time. If it makes sense under 16 to 18 months to buy over rental, that tends to be the way to go. If it's anything over 2 or 3 years, in every neighborhood is going to be different. You might want to consider renting.
Right.
That's the break even.
Yeah.
But yeah, we should actually do a whole segment on rent versus buy analysis. I could talk about that for hours. In terms of not just the equity you're earning and saving, but also just some of the tax advantages that you get from buying. And I don't think a lot of people understand how easy it is to buy, especially first time home buyers, with the process and how streamlined it can be. So there obviously are stressful moments, probably the biggest financial decision you'll make in your life up to that point. But it's not as hard as you think. It's probably just as stressful as some of the rental applications they have to go through.
It's probably less stressful in some cases.
Yeah. What else have you been seeing in terms of just availability for showings? At else you want to comment on?
Yeah, I mean, I think we touched on this a little bit, but I am at the age, I think I talked about, where a lot of my not the age, sorry, at the point in my career where a lot of my clients that might have bought with me, 3 or 4 years ago are now looking to possibly move again, have made that first purchase, maybe gotten married, had a few kids. And I'm seeing a lot of, probably the biggest amount of inquiries I've had are people saying, I have to get to the suburbs. And the concern is, and the follow-up question to that is, do you think that we're going to be in huge competition because everyone's like us? And these people might have, 1 or 2 kids or in a really small space or, and by the suburbs, I mean like the fringe towns of Boston. So the Melrose, the Milton, the Stoneham, Medford, like those kind of areas. Yeah. And, I don't really know the answer to that because it's hard to tell, but the inquiries that I'm getting, there are probably going to be more people looking at the suburbs. But again, like, are people just in this temporary mindset? And once everything's lifted, they're going to go back to like loving to walk into restaurants and whatever. I don't know, but it's just an interesting question that, I'd be interested on your, what you think about that.
Yeah, I think it's more competitive in the suburb towns, under $1 million. So, it depends on the budget. So I think typically between 600,000 and 800,000, you're getting a 2-bed in the city and maybe a second bath in South Boston, Charlestown. In Back Bay, South End, you might have to go over. You definitely will have to go over $1 million for that. But in the suburbs, you can get 2,000 square feet for 700,000-800,000, and it's a hard decision to make for some people because in the stage in their life, if you just have you have a kid on the way, you're planning on to have a kid in the next year, you have to look at a 5 and 7 year plan. And if it's in the city versus in the suburbs, sometimes it's a better buy to skip that second house 3 years and just go straight to one that can suffice for 5 to 7 years. I think from the offers I've been putting in just outside of the city, it's been extremely competitive. The ones inside the city, it's it's I would probably say about half of the amount of people are bidding than in Medford, Melrose, Milton, Weston, some of these towns that are just outside. And then I think, but like I said, it's a little bit, the more expensive you go, it tends to be less bidding, no matter what fringe neighborhood. So
do your buyers have home sale contingencies?
Most of these buyers that are debating whether to buy first time in South Boston, Boston or Charlestown, Cambridge are that are considering other neighborhoods don't.
It's the same with me.
Okay. But people that do have the home sale contingencies might be someone that bought a 1-bed condo in Dorchester or 1-bed in South End, and then they're looking to move in with their spouse and buy a bigger house, or they just got married, just had kids, and looking to buy a bigger house. So they might have a smaller condo contingency, which I don't find is that difficult in an offer, especially when you're writing up an offer to, have a full CMA done, which is a comparative market analysis on that property. So when you're going in with an offer, you're saying, listen, this is what we're going to price this at. It's right in line with the market, or we're even going below market just to have more incentive to sell it quickly. So when the seller is getting that offer, they're saying, or they're looking at that other home with a home sale contingency and saying that this could go quickly. But
Do you send the CMA with the offer, or no? You just say we have backup.
yeah, I would send it.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's if you're in a multiple bidding situation, you got to do whatever you can
Right.
to make yourself look more attractive. So
Makes sense. Okay.
how are you? How's everything else going? Yeah.
It's going. I mean, it's definitely been a little bit of a challenge, but I've really just been trying to focus on things that I can control, and that's been helping a lot. I'm sure I'll look back on this and be really thankful because Owen, my son, is 17 months and every single day is changing. And so it's been really cool to just watch him talk and understand. And he's obsessed with ducks. So we go on a duck hunt every day. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's going and we're learning and adapting. I can't say I'm not craving a little bit more of my old routine, but I'm definitely thankful that we're all healthy and we have this time together. So
Yeah. Oh yeah. And you appreciate, you appreciate everything a little bit more, I think. And,
yeah.
I'm at this stage where I'm learning how to become a teacher.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how's the homeschooling going?
Yeah, it's interesting. I can see why they get so pent up, with some of this stuff, but I couldn't say that I would be any different.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I keep saying to my husband. I'm like, thankfully we don't have to be teachers because that would be a whole new level of things that we're not ready for. So
yeah,
I'm sure you're doing a great job, but kudos to you.
Thanks. All right, well, that wraps up this week's session, this Boston Town Hall. Next week we'll be live at the same time, and if you have any questions in the meantime, let us know. But until then, stay safe, and that's it. All right, see you later.